Mom, if you don't like it, you can leave. My son's voice echoed off the walls of my own house. He was yelling at me, my Robert, my only son. He was yelling at me like he never had in his life. My name is Patricia Miller. I am 56 years old. I was an elementary school teacher for 30 years. I became a widow 8 years ago when my husband passed away from a massive heart attack. I have one son, Robert, who today looks at me as if I were his worst enemy. I stood in front of my bedroom door, staring at something I still couldn't process. Mrs. Ellen, my daughter-in-law's mother, asleep in my bed, lying in my sheets, surrounded by her things. Her creams on my dresser, her clothes in my closet, her slippers next to my nightstand. As if this were her place, as if I were the intruder. Robert, I tried to speak, but my voice came out choked. I had just returned from a work trip a week away, and I was coming home to this. No, Mom. Enough. His eyes were red with rage. Never in 56 years of life had I seen my son look at me like that. Mrs. Ellen is going through a really tough time. She needs peace. She needs a comfortable space. And you come in making drama over a simple room. A simple room? The words barely came out of my mouth. Robert, it's my room. It's my bed. This is my house. It's our house, he shouted louder. We live here. Danielle and I pay the utilities. We have rights too. Every word was a stab. I felt as if the floor were moving beneath my feet. She needs comfort. He continued, barely lowering his tone but maintaining that hardness that felt completely alien to me. She's your granddaughter's grandma. Danielle is devastated seeing her mother suffer, and all you can do is think about yourself. But I tried to explain. If you find it so terrible to help, he interrupted. If you can't have a little empathy, if your comfort is more important than the well-being of this family. He paused. He looked at me with a contempt I never imagined seeing in my own son's eyes. Then leave. Nobody is forcing you to stay. If you find it so awful, you can leave. The silence that followed was deafening. You can leave. Those 2 words fell on me like a death sentence. They erased me. They turned me into nothing, into a stranger in my own home. There I was, 56 years old, an entire life dedicated to the man standing in front of me, and he was kicking me out of my home for his mother-in-law, for his wife's mother, for a woman he had barely known for 6 years. Danielle appeared in the hallway behind Robert. She was holding my granddaughter Sophia in her arms. The child was sleeping oblivious to everything. Danielle didn't say a word. She just looked at me with that expression that said, "Don't make a scene. You have to understand." I opened my mouth. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to remind Robert who took care of him when he had pneumonia at age 5, who stayed up for weeks, who sold her gold earrings to pay for his college, who held his hand at his father's funeral when he was shaking with grief. But I didn't say anything. I kept silent because there are silences that weigh more than 1,000 words, and mine weighed 30 years of unconditional love that had just been thrown in the trash. I bent down. I picked up my suitcase from the floor. I was still wearing my travel clothes. I still smelled like the bus and exhaustion. I had driven 6 hours to get home to come back to this. I gave my son one last look at that man I no longer recognized. At that stranger with my Robert's face, but with the heart of someone I didn't know. And I left. I went down the stairs slowly, one by one. Each step was a memory. Here I carried him when he was learning to walk. Here he fell and scraped his knee. Here we would sit together eating popsicles on hot afternoons. I could hear Robert breathing heavily upstairs. I could feel his gaze, but I didn't turn around. If I looked at him one more time, if I saw that coldness in his eyes, I would collapse right there. I walked out the front door, the same door I had crossed thousands of times with grocery bags, the same one I crossed with newborn Robert, wrapped in a blue blanket, my heart overflowing with love and hope. I walked aimlessly through the streets of the town. My legs moved on their own. People greeted me. Mrs. Lucy from her window, Mr. Peter from his newspaper stand. I responded automatically, a fake smile painted on my face. I reached the town square. I sat down on a bench, the same one where I would sit with my husband on Sundays after church, the same one where I watched Robert while he played as a child when he still called me Mommy, with that sweet voice that was now just a memory. I took my phone out of my purse. My fingers were trembling. I dialed a number I had saved for years. Mr. David Salazar, lawyer, a trusted friend of my late husband. Patricia. His voice sounded surprised when he recognized me. Mr. David? My voice was strangely calm. It was the calm that comes after total devastation, the calm in the eye of the hurricane. I need a legal notice. Urgent. I have tenants in my property who need to vacate in 24 hours. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Patricia, his voice became cautious. Are we talking about your son and his family? Yes. Are you completely sure about what you're doing? I saw Robert's eyes again, full of rage, full of contempt. I heard that shout again. You can leave. I am completely sure. I'll stop by in 1 hour with the documents. Where are you? At the Colonial Hotel Room 203. I hung up. I stayed sitting on that bench watching the afternoon fall over the town. The church bells rang 6 times. The square slowly filled with people leaving work, couples walking hand in hand, mothers with their children, complete families, and me there alone with a suitcase and a broken heart. Because what Robert didn't know, what none of them imagined, was that my silence was not weakness. It was not submission. It was not acceptance. It was the silence before the storm, and in the next 24 hours my son was going to discover something he had apparently forgotten, that I wasn't just his mother, I was the owner of that house, the only owner, and that there are lines you don't cross, not even with the person who gave you life. The Colonial Hotel was a modest place, small, clean nothing compared to my house, but at that moment it was all I had. Room 203 smelled of lavender and loneliness. I sat down on the bed. I left the suitcase on the floor unopened, and for the first time since I left my house, the tears began to fall. I wasn't crying for myself. I was crying for what we had been, for what we had lost. Because there was a time not so long ago when Robert and I were inseparable. He was born on March 14th after 18 hours of labor. My husband Michael never left my side for a second. When we finally heard that first cry, we both looked at each other and knew that our lives had just changed forever. Robert was a calm baby. He slept well. He ate well. He smiled easily. But above all, he was affectionate. From a very young age, he sought my arms. He would snuggle against my chest. He would caress my face with his chubby little hands. "He's a mama's boy," Michael would say, laughing. And it was true. Robert and I had a bond that seemed unbreakable. I remember the afternoons after school. I would arrive tired from teaching all day, but Robert would be waiting at the window. As soon as he saw my car, he would run out. Mommy's home," and he would launch himself into my arms as if he hadn't seen me in years when it had only been 8 hours. Michael worked for a construction company. We didn't earn much, but it was enough. We lived in a small apartment in the city. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where the 3 of us barely fit, but we were happy. Someday, Michael would tell me, hugging me from behind while I cooked, "We're going to have our own house with a yard with space for Robert to run, with a big room for us." Someday, I would repeat, smiling. That someday arrived when Robert was 8 years old. Michael had saved every penny for years. I had too. We saved in a cookie tin hidden in the closet. Coins, wrinkled bills, everything we could set aside after paying rent and groceries. We bought a piece of land on the outskirts of town. It wasn't big, but it was ours. Michael designed the house himself, a simple drawing on a napkin that later became blueprints. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, a front yard. We built it little by little. On weekends, Michael and I would go to the land. He would lay bricks. I would mix cement. Robert would play among the half-finished walls, imagining what it would be like to live there. "This is going to be my room, right, Daddy?" he would ask, pointing to a corner. "Right here, champ." It took us 3 years to finish it. 3 years of hard work, blistered hands, aching backs. But the day we laid the last tile in the bathroom, the 3 of us hugged in the middle of the empty living room and cried tears of happiness. "It's ours," Michael said. "Completely ours. Nobody can take it away from us." We moved in one afternoon in July. Robert was 11 years old. I remember him running through the whole house, screaming with excitement. He went up and down the stairs. He opened and closed the doors. He looked out every window. "It's huge, Mommy. It's the most beautiful house in the world." That night we ate dinner sitting on the living room floor because we didn't have any furniture yet. Hot dogs and fries that I bought from the local burger joint. The 3 of us in a circle, sharing, laughing. "Let's toast," Michael said, raising his soda. "To this house, to this family, to being together." We clinked our glasses, and at that moment, looking at my husband and my son, I thought there could be nothing more perfect than this. The years passed. Robert grew up. He became a teenager, then a young man, always responsible, always studious, always affectionate with me. When he was 17, Michael started feeling unwell, chest pains, tiredness. "It's the job," he would say. "I'm getting old." He was 52. One Sunday morning while we were eating breakfast, Michael brought his hand to his chest. His face went gray. He collapsed from his chair before we could react. "Dad!" Robert screamed. "We called the ambulance. It arrived in 15 minutes, but it wasn't enough." Michael died on the way to the hospital. A massive heart attack, sudden, without warning. My world fell apart. Robert, who was 17, became my support. He would hold me when I cried at night. He took care of the funeral arrangements. He would tell me, "It's okay, Mommy. I'm here. You're not alone." For months, I couldn't function. I would get up, go to work like an automaton, come back and lock myself in my room. Robert cooked, cleaned, brought me tea. He would sit with me in silence when words weren't enough. "I'm never going to leave you, Mommy," he told me one night. I was in bed looking at the ceiling. He sat down next to me and took my hand. "No matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. I promise." That promise sustained me through the darkest year of my life. Little by little, I began to heal. Robert entered college. He studied business administration. He got part-time jobs to help with expenses. He never complained. He never made me feel like a burden. "This house is yours, Mommy," he would tell me when I tried to give him money. "You and Dad built it for me. It's the least I can do." He graduated with honors. He got a good job in sales. And then he met Danielle. At first I liked her. She was polite, pretty. She seemed to make Robert happy. They got married after 2 years of dating. A small but beautiful wedding. I cried with emotion watching my son at the altar. "Take care of him," I told Danielle privately. "He's a good man, the best." "I know," she replied, smiling. "I'm very lucky." They had Sophia the following year, my granddaughter, my joy. When I saw her for the first time with her eyes closed and her little fists clenched, I felt like Michael was there with me, that somehow everything made sense. They were living in an apartment in the city, small, expensive. Danielle often complained about the space, the noise, the lack of green areas for the child. "Why don't you come live with me?" I told them one afternoon during a family dinner. "There's plenty of space. Sophia can have the yard. You can save money." Robert looked at me with those eyes full of gratitude that I knew so well. "Are you sure, Mommy?" "Completely. This house is too big for me alone. I miss having life here." They moved in 3 months later. At first, everything was perfect. I helped with Sophia. I cooked. I cleaned. I felt useful. I felt needed. But then she appeared, Mrs. Ellen, and everything started to change. At first, they were short visits a weekend, then a week, then 2. She stayed longer each time, and each time I felt like I was becoming invisible in my own house. Danielle started talking to me differently, with less respect, with less consideration. Robert stopped asking me how my day was. Sophia spent more time with her Grandma Ellen than with me. But I kept silent because I thought it was temporary, because I thought things would go back to how they were before. How wrong I was. And now, sitting in that hotel room with tears falling onto my hands, I understood something terrible. I had lost my son long before that shout. I had lost him little by little, in silence without realizing it. There was a knock on the door. It was Mr. David with a manila envelope in his hand and a serious look on his face. "Patricia," he said, walking in. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" I looked at him. I wiped my tears. "More sure than I've ever been in my life." "Very well then, let's sign this, and tomorrow first thing in the morning I'll deliver it personally." I signed every page without trembling, and with each signature I felt something inside me hardening, growing stronger, because my son had forgotten something very important, something that I had taught him when he was little. Actions have consequences, and he was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed sitting on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, reviewing every moment of the last few years, looking for signs, looking for the exact moment I lost my son. At 600 in the morning, I got up, I showered, I got dressed in the clothes I had in my suitcase. Black pants, a white blouse. Nothing special, but I fixed my hair. I put on a little lipstick. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted to look strong because I wasn't going to give them the pleasure of seeing me destroyed. Mr. David arrived at the hotel exactly at 8 Huzaries. He brought the documents already prepared, a legal notice formal cold as my son's shout. "Do you want me to go alone?" he asked me. "Do you have to be present?" "No," I replied firmly. "I'm going with you. I want them to see my face when you hand this to them." We got into his car. The drive to my house was silent. Mr. David didn't ask questions. He just drove, looking at the road, giving me space to breathe. When we arrived, the sun was already high. It was a beautiful morning. The garden that Michael and I planted was full of flowers. The trees we planted when Robert was a child provided cool shade. Everything looked perfect from the outside. Nobody would imagine the war being waged inside. Mr. David knocked on the door. 3 firm knocks. Danielle opened it. She was holding Sophia. When she saw me, her face changed. Surprise, then discomfort. "Patricia, we weren't expecting." "Good morning, Mom." "I am the lawyer David Salazar," Mr. David interrupted in a professional voice. "I am here to deliver a legal notice." Robert appeared behind Danielle. He was still wearing his pajamas. His hair was messy. When he saw me, his eyes hardened. "What is this, Mom?" I didn't answer. I just stood there behind Mr. David with my back straight and my head held high. Mr. David extended the envelope. "It is an eviction notice. You have 24 hours to vacate this property." The silence that followed was absolute. Danielle turned pale. Robert took the envelope with trembling hands. He opened it. He started to read. I watched his face go from confusion to disbelief, and then to fury. "Is this serious?" His voice was trembling. "Are you kicking me out of the house?" "No," I replied calmly, a calm that surprised even me. "I am reminding you whose house this is." "But Mom—" "Don't call me Mom." The words came out cold, sharp. "Yesterday you yelled at me. You kicked me out. You told me to leave, so I left. And now you have to leave too." "That was different. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean what, Robert? You didn't mean for me to leave? You didn't mean to say that if I didn't like it I could get lost, because that is exactly what you said." Danielle started crying. Sophia, confused by the atmosphere, also started to cry. "Patricia, please," Danielle pleaded. "There has to be another way. We can't leave in 24 hours. Where are we going to go with the child?" "You should have thought about that yesterday when you gave my room to your mother, when you treated me like a stranger in my own house." Mrs. Ellen came down the stairs at that moment. She was wearing one of my bathrobes. She was in my house wearing my clothes, sleeping in my bed, and she had the nerve to come down as if she were the owner. "What is going on here?" she asked in an annoyed voice. I looked her directly in the eyes. For the first time in all those months of visits, I held her gaze without looking away. "What is happening, Mom, is that you and my son and his family have 24 hours to leave my property." "What?" Her face twisted into a sneer of contempt. "How dare you, Robert, do something?" "The notice is legal and binding," Mr. David intervened. "If you have not voluntarily vacated in 24 hours, we will proceed with a court order. And believe me, you do not want to reach that point." Robert looked at me as if he didn't recognize me, as if I were a monster. "I can't believe you're doing this, Mom. We're your family." "Exactly, Robert. We are family. Or we were. Until you treated me like I was less important than a stranger. Until you yelled at me in my own house. Until you chose her mother over yours." For the first time, my voice broke. "I was your mother, and you kicked me out like I was trash." Tears began to fall, but they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of rage, of pain, of 30 years of trampled love. "You traded me for her," I continued, pointing at Mrs. Ellen. "You gave her my room, my space, my place, and when I protested, you told me to leave. Well, I left, and now you are leaving too." Mr. David put a hand on my shoulder. "Patricia, let's go. Everything has been said." He was right. There was nothing more to say. I turned to leave, but before crossing the threshold, I turned one last time. 24 hours, I said. Not a minute more. We left. We got into the car. Mr. David started the engine, and as we drove away, I could see in the side mirror Robert standing at the door, the envelope in his hand, watching his mother drive away. Maybe he expected me to come back to give in to beg. He didn't know me at all because I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give in. For the first time in my life, I was going to set boundaries, even if it tore me apart inside. Mr. David dropped me off at the hotel. "Will you be all right?" he asked. "Yes." I lied. I went up to my room. I sat on the bed. And then finally, I allowed myself to break down. I cried harder than I had cried since Michael died. I cried for everything I had lost, for everything that would never be again. But in the middle of that crying, something strange began to happen. My phone started ringing. It was Martha, my lifelong neighbor. "Patricia, sweetheart, what happened? I saw the lawyer leave your house. The whole town is talking. Of course, a small town where everyone knows everything." "Martha," I said in a hoarse voice, "I don't want to talk about it right now." "It's okay, my dear, but I want you to know something. If you need somewhere to stay, my house is open. And if your son did something wrong to you, half the town is on your side." I hung up and the phone rang again. It was Carol from the bakery. Then Rose, my former colleague from school. Then Joe, the owner of the pharmacy. One after another, everyone asking, everyone offering help, everyone telling me I wasn't alone. And that's when I understood something. Robert thought I had no one, that I depended on him, that without him I would be lost. But he was wrong. I had lived in that town for 30 years. I had taught their children. I had attended their weddings and their funerals. I had been present in their lives, and now they were present in mine. What Robert didn't know, what he was about to discover, was that his mother was not alone, and that the 24 hours I had given him were going to be the longest of his life. Because what he didn't imagine was that the whole town had seen how he treated his mother. And in a small town, those things are not easily forgiven. That afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Patricia Miller." "Yes, that's me. I'm calling from the local newspaper. We received information that you are in a legal conflict with your son. We would like to interview you." My blood ran cold. "What? How did you know that?" "Ma'am, this is a small town. News travels fast, especially when it involves well-known people like you. You were an elementary school teacher for 30 years. You taught half the town. People talk." "I have no comment," I said quickly. "I understand it's a difficult time, but the community has a right to know. There are many elderly people in similar situations. Your story could help to—" I hung up. My head was spinning. The newspaper and interview. This was getting out of control, but I didn't have time to process it because someone knocked on my room door. I opened it cautiously. It was Martha, my neighbor. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were Rose Carroll, Mr. Peter, Mrs. Lucy, and at least 10 more people from the town. "Patricia," Martha said, taking my hands. "We came to talk to you." I let them in. The room filled with people. Some sat on the bed. Others leaned against the walls. Everyone looked at me with a mix of concern and determination. "We want you to know something," Mr. Peter began. "What your son did to you is not right, and we are not going to stay quiet." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "That if he and his family need anything from the town, they won't get it," Carol said firmly. "My bakery won't sell to them. The pharmacy won't either. The market won't either." "But you can't do that," I said, alarmed. "There's a child, my granddaughter." "The child is not at fault," Rose intervened. "But your son needs to learn that actions have consequences, that he can't treat his mother like that and expect everything to stay the same. Besides," Mrs. Lucy added, "we want you to know that you can stay at my house. I have an extra room. You don't need to be in a hotel, and I can help you with the legal expenses if this drags on." "I have savings," Mr. Peter said. I was speechless. I looked at all those people who had taken the trouble to come, who were willing to support me, to fight for me. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "I didn't expect this." "Well, you should have," Martha said, hugging me. "Patricia, you've been there for all of us for years. When my son had trouble in school, you stayed after classes to help him. When Carol's husband died, you were the first one to knock on her door with food. When Mr. Peter got sick, you organized a collection. You have given so much. It's time for you to receive." The tears returned, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of pain. They were tears of gratitude, of surprise, of something I hadn't felt in a long time, feeling valued. "Thank you," I managed to say. "Thank you all." They stayed for a while longer. We talked. We drank coffee that Carol had brought. For the first time in days, I smiled. I even laughed. When they finally left, I was left alone in the room. But I no longer felt alone. I sat down on the bed and looked at my phone. I had 3 missed calls from Robert, 2 messages from Danielle, one from a number I didn't recognize. I opened the message from the unknown number. "Mrs. Patricia, I'm Mary. I was your student 15 years ago. I heard about what happened with your son. I want you to know that if you need a place to stay, my husband and I have an available apartment. No cost. It's the least I can do for the teacher who taught me to read, the one who told me I could be someone in life. Please let me know if you need anything." I read the message 3 times, and each time I felt something inside me getting stronger, because I had believed that without Robert, without my son, I would be lost. I had believed that he was all I had, but I was wrong. I had much more than I imagined. I had an entire town that knew me, that respected me, that was willing to stand by me. And Robert was about to discover it, because the next few hours were going to be decisive. And what happened when the 24-hour deadline was reached was something that changed everything forever. My phone rang again. Robert. I hesitated, but something inside me needed to hear his voice. I needed to know what he was going to say. I answered, "Mom." His voice sounded different, softer, almost pleading. "Mom, we need to talk." "Hello, Robert." "Please, Mom, this is crazy. You can't just kick us out like this. We're your family. Yesterday you kicked me out." I didn't mean that. I was angry, frustrated. Danielle was very upset about her mom, and I lost my head, but it wasn't serious. I remained silent. I let his words hang in the air. "Mom, please talk to me." "It wasn't serious," I repeated slowly. "You yelled at me. You humiliated me. You kicked me out of my own house. And it wasn't serious. Mom, Do you know how that feels, Robert? Do you know how it feels for your own son, the son you carried in your arms, the son you taught to walk, the son you sold your things for so he could go to school, to look at you with contempt and tell you to leave?" "I'm sorry. I really am sorry." "You're sorry. Or you're sorry that now you have to find somewhere to live in less than 24 hours. I heard him breathing on the other end. Deep breaths. He was crying. "Mom, we have nowhere to go. The apartment we had has already been rented out. We can't afford a hotel with the child. Danielle is desperate. Her mother has a heart condition, and the stress is killing her." There it was. The excuse. There was always an excuse when it came to Mrs. Ellen. And what about my heart, Robert? What about my health? What about my stress? Or does that not matter because I'm your mother and I'm supposed to put up with everything? "That's not it, Mom. You know I love you." "I don't know that, Robert. Yesterday it didn't look like it. Yesterday it looked like you loved your mother-in-law more than your own mother. She's going through a very deep depression. Her husband left her 2 months ago. She's devastated. Danielle is her only daughter, and they only have us." For the first time, something inside me wavered. Depression, abandonment, pain. I knew that pain. I had lived it when Michael died. But then I remembered something. "Robert, when your father died, do you remember who was there for me?" Silence. "It was you. You supported me. You took care of me. You told me you would never leave me. And I believed you. I trusted you. And now when someone else needs you, you discard me as if I didn't matter." "It's not the same, Mom." "You're right. It's not the same because I never asked you to kick anyone out of their own house. I never asked you to give my place to another person. I never yelled at you telling you that if you didn't like it, you could leave." I heard sobs on the other side. "Mom, please give me a chance. Let me fix this. We can talk. We can find a solution." "You had your chance, Robert, and you wasted it when you yelled at me in front of that woman, when you defended your mother-in-law before your mother, Mom, 24 hours. That's all you have." I hung up. My hands were trembling. My heart was pounding. Tears were falling again because a part of me wanted to give in, wanted to say it's okay. Come back. Let's forget all this. I wanted to go back to being the mother who forgives everything, who puts up with everything, who sacrifices everything. But another part of me, a part that had been asleep for too long, was telling me no. Enough is enough. You have to set boundaries. And that second voice was stronger. The next morning I got up early and dressed carefully. Today would be the decisive confrontation. When Mr. David picked me up at the hotel, I was wearing my best black dress, the one Michael had complimented so many times. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I needed to feel strong. "Are you ready for this, Patricia?" Mr. David's eyes reflected concern as he held the car door open for me. "As ready as I'll ever be." The drive to my house was shorter than I remembered, or perhaps time simply speeds up when you're headed towards something you dread. My street looked the same as always, quiet, tree-lined, peaceful. Nothing on the outside suggested the turmoil within. Several cars were parked outside my house. I recognized some Danielle's friends, Mrs. Ellen's family. A small crowd had gathered. "They brought reinforcements," Mr. David murmured. My heart pounded in my chest, but my face remained calm. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me flustered. Not today. It was exactly noon. The deadline had arrived. I knocked on the door, my own door, because I didn't have my key anymore. I'd left it on the table when I departed. Danielle opened it. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but when she saw me, her expression hardened. "You actually came," she said coldly. "The deadline is up. I hope you have everything ready." She stepped aside without another word. I entered my house, and what I saw took my breath away. The living room was full of people, at least 15 of them, all staring at me as if I were the villain in this story. Among them sat Mrs. Ellen enthroned in my favorite armchair with Sophia in her arms. The child was sleeping blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding around her. Robert stood by the window, refusing to look at me. His gaze remained fixed on the floor, shoulders hunched with tension. "The legal deadline has ended," Mr. David announced firmly. "I hope you're prepared to vacate the property." A woman I didn't recognize stood up. She was young, perhaps in her 30s, carrying a briefcase with a professional air. "I am attorney Jessica Brown. I represent the Miller family." My heart skipped a beat. Had Robert hired a lawyer? "What does this mean?" Mr. David asked, his voice steady. "It means," the lawyer replied with a smug smile, "that my clients have legal rights to this property, and we are challenging the eviction notice." "Rights?" I repeated, disbelief coloring my voice. "What rights?" Danielle pulled some papers from her purse and handed them to me with a triumphant expression. "These rights." I took them with trembling hands. They were notarized documents, contracts. I scanned them quickly, unable to believe what I was seeing. It was a deed of gift dated 3 years ago when Robert and Danielle moved into my house. According to the document, I had ceded the use of the property to them indefinitely, with all maintenance obligations in their charge, and with a clause stating I could not revoke the contract without just cause and with 90 days' notice. "This is false," my voice quavered. "I never signed this." "Your signature is right there," Danielle pointed out. And indeed it was my signature on every page, looking convincingly authentic. I don't remember signing this." "You signed it," Mrs. Ellen interrupted with a sickeningly sweet tone. 3 years ago when Robert and Danielle moved in. Don't you remember Danielle said it was so they could have something official to feel secure? And you signed because you wanted your son to be happy." Vague memories began to surface. Yes, I had signed some papers 3 years ago, but Danielle had said they were bank forms to add Robert as a beneficiary to my account in case something happened to me. "They tricked me," I whispered, the realization like ice water in my veins. "They made me sign this without telling me what it really was." "You'll have to prove that," Danielle's lawyer said dismissively. "But in the meantime, this contract is valid, and by law, you cannot evict them without 90 days prior notice." Mr. David took the papers, reviewing them quickly. His face grew increasingly serious. "Patricia," he said quietly, "this is notarized. It has all the legal stamps. It's valid." My legs nearly gave out. I leaned against the wall for support. "It can't be," I said, shaking my head. "It simply can't be." "Oh, but it is," Danielle said, crossing her arms triumphantly. "So I regret to inform you that your 24-hour notice is worthless. You can't kick us out. This house is as much ours as it is yours." I looked at Robert, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. His hands were shoved in his pockets, his jaw clenched tight. "Robert," my voice broke with the betrayal of it all. "Did you know about this?" He finally looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that destroyed me. Guilt. "Danielle told me it was just for security," he stammered. "That if something ever happened to you, we would have somewhere to live. I didn't know she was going to—" "Going to what?" Danielle interrupted sharply. "Going to use our legal rights when your mother kicked us out of our house for no reason. I kicked you out because you kicked me out first." The rage I'd been containing finally erupted. "Because you yelled at me. Because you made me feel like a stranger in my own house." "You're the one who exaggerates everything," Danielle replied with unconcealed contempt. "We asked you a favor, a simple favor, to let my mom use your room for a few days. And you made a giant drama, as always." "As always," I repeated incredulous. Yes, as always. You're always the victim, always the martyr. Everything is always about you. Poor Patricia, poor mother-in-law. You never think about anyone else. Each word landed like a physical blow, each sentence a knife twisting deeper. Danielle, enough. Robert's intervention was weak, barely audible. Enough, seriously, Robert. Danielle turned on him with venom. Your mother kicked us out. She humiliated us in front of the whole town. She made us look like bad people. And you're still defending her. I'm not defending her. I'm just saying that you always defend her. It's always her, always your mommy. When are you going to understand that I am your family now, me and Sophia, not her? The silence that followed was absolute. I looked at the people in the room, all watching as if this were entertainment, as if my pain were a spectacle for their amusement. Then I looked at my son, this man I no longer recognized, who stood there saying nothing while his wife destroyed me. Aren't you going to say anything? I asked him directly. Are you going to let her talk to me like that? Robert opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down again, and that silence was the clearest answer he could have given. Very well, I said, my voice oddly steady despite the earthquake inside me. You're right. The contract is legal. I cannot kick you out in 24 hours. I watched Danielle smile with satisfaction, but I wasn't finished. But I can do other things. This house has my name on it. Only my name. I can cut off the utilities. I can stop paying for water, electricity, gas. I can make your life here very uncomfortable for those 90 days. Danielle's smile disappeared. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. Try me. Mr. David touched my shoulder gently. Patricia, it's not a good idea. They could sue you for, I don't care. I cut him off. If they're going to use legal tricks, I can too. If they want to play dirty, I can play dirtier. It was then that Robert finally spoke up, his voice louder and more authoritative than it had been all day. Enough, both of you. Everyone turned to look at him. Mom, Danielle, both of you stop. This is out of control. We are destroying this family over a house, over a room, over pride. It's not about pride. My voice trembled with the effort of restraining my emotions. It's about respect, about dignity, about not being treated like trash in my own home. And you don't understand, he said to Danielle, that this woman raised me, gave me everything. You can't ask me to treat her like she doesn't matter. And what about me? Danielle's eyes filled with tears. Don't I matter? Doesn't my mom matter? Does only she matter? Robert ran his hands through his hair in frustration. He looked exhausted, destroyed by the conflict between the two women in his life. I don't know what to do, he finally admitted. I don't know how to fix this. At that moment, I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder I'd been carrying, the one Monica had given me that morning. Maybe this will help, I said, placing it on the coffee table. Maybe if you see this, you'll understand what's really happening. Danielle's face drained of color. What is that? Why don't you open it and find out? Robert approached the table hesitantly. He picked up the folder, opened it, and began to read the contents. I watched his expression transform confusion, giving way to shock, to disbelief. Disbelief to horror. What is this, Danielle? His voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion. These are your conversations, your posts talking badly about my mother, planning how to get her out of the house. His voice rose with each word. Is this real? Did you write this? Danielle didn't answer. She stared at the floor, her body rigid. Answer me. Yes, she finally screamed, her composure shattering completely. Yes, I wrote it. So what? Everything I said is true. Your mother is controlling. She was in everything. And yes, I wanted her to leave because this house should be ours, not hers. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert dropped the folder and the papers scattered across the floor, all those words, all those lies exposed for everyone to see. You manipulated me, Robert said so quietly I had to strain to hear. For months you made me believe that my mother was the problem, that she was the one who didn't let us live, and all the time it was you. Robert, I just wanted what was best for us. The best destroying my relationship with my mother was the best. The spectators in the room began to murmur uncomfortably. Danielle's lawyer gathered her papers quickly. I think it's time for me to leave, she announced, stuffing documents into her briefcase. One by one, all the guests began to depart. Nobody wanted to witness the fallout of what was unfolding. Soon only the 5 of us remained, Robert, Danielle, Mrs. Ellen, Mr. David, and me. Mrs. Ellen stood up, still clutching Sophia in her arms. "Danielle, let's go," she commanded. "We don't have to stay here and put up with this." "No," Robert's voice was firm, now authoritative. "No one is leaving. Not yet. Because this ends today, here now." He turned to me, and for the first time in days, I saw my son, my real son, with his eyes full of tears and his heart visibly shattered. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Those simple words cracked something inside me, breaking and healing simultaneously. He took a step toward me, then another, and then wrapped me in a hug that felt like coming home. This wasn't a perfunctory embrace. It was the embrace of a child who realizes he has wounded his mother deeply. The embrace of someone awakening from a nightmare. "I'm so sorry," he repeated between sobs. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I couldn't speak. I could only return his embrace, feeling his tears dampening my shoulder, feeling him tremble, feeling that after so many days of darkness, there was finally a ray of light. "Robert," Danielle's voice sliced through our moment of reconciliation. "Seriously, are you really going to believe her? Those conversations are taken out of context. I was venting to a friend. Everyone talks badly about their mother-in-law." Robert pulled away from me and wiped his tears. He turned to his wife with newfound clarity in his eyes. "No, Danielle. Not everyone plans for months to get their mother-in-law out of her own house. Not everyone manipulates their husband to see his mother as the enemy. I didn't manipulate you, I just opened your eyes. Opened my eyes or blinded me, because now that I read this, now that I see everything together, I realize things. How every time my mother said something, you said the opposite. How every time I wanted to spend time with her, you had some emergency. How little by little you pushed me away from her. Because she didn't let us live. Because you didn't want to share me." Robert's voice rose to a shout. "You wanted me to choose between my mother and you, and I was so foolish that I fell for your game." Danielle began crying, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of fury, of rage at being discovered. "Great, now I'm the bad guy. Now everything is my fault. And what about your mother? She kicked us out. She humiliated us. She left us homeless." "Because you put your mother to sleep in her bed," Robert fired back. "In her room, in her most intimate space, how did you expect her to react?" "I expected her to have empathy. My mother was suffering. And mine wasn't my mother suffering when I took her room, when I treated her like she didn't matter, when I yelled at her and told her to leave." He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with emotion. "Oh my God," he murmured. "What have I done? What have I done to my mother?" Mrs. Ellen, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "Robert, you have to understand. Danielle was just taking care of her family, of her mother. There's nothing wrong with that." "There's nothing wrong," Robert looked at her directly, his eyes hardening. "There's nothing wrong with lying, with manipulating, with destroying the relationship between a mother and her son." "I didn't destroy anything," Mrs. Ellen replied coldly. "Your mother did it all by herself with her attitude." "My attitude? I found my voice at last." "What attitude? The one of opening the doors of my house, the one of taking care of my granddaughter, the one of cooking and cleaning and doing everything to make you comfortable, the one of sticking your nose where it doesn't belong," Mrs. Ellen shot back venomously. "The one of believing that this house is only yours when your son lives here, the one of not understanding that you are no longer the most important woman in his life." Those words hurt more than I wanted to admit. They struck at my deepest insecurities, the ones that had been growing since Robert married Danielle. "Ma'am," Mr. David intervened, "I think it's time for you to leave. This is a family matter." "I am family," Mrs. Ellen shouted, her face reddening with anger. "I am that child's grandmother. I have as much right to be here as she does." "No, Mom." Robert's voice was now firm cold. "You have no right to be here. This is my mother's house, and you are not welcome." Mrs. Ellen looked at him as if he had physically struck her. "What did you say? That you have to leave? Now. You and your daughter used this house. You used all of us for your own benefit. And I was so blind that I didn't see it." "Robert, you can't talk to my mother like that." Danielle's voice quavered with outrage. "I can't. Why not? She talked to my mother like that. You talked to my mother like that. Why does my mother have to put up with it, but yours doesn't?" "Because my mother gave me life. She raised me alone. She went through a horrible divorce. She deserves respect." "And mine doesn't," Robert was shouting now, his face flushed with righteous anger. My mother who raised me with my father, who worked every day of her life to give me a home, who sold her things to pay for my college, who stayed with me when my father died, and I broke down. Doesn't she deserve respect? The silence that followed was absolute. Danielle had no answer. Mrs. Ellen looked at the floor and I could barely breathe. After days of feeling invisible, of feeling worthless, my son was finally defending me. Robert, Danielle said, her voice softening, taking on a pleading, manipulative tone I now recognized all too well. I know you're angry. I know things got out of control, but we can fix this. We can talk. We can— No, we can't, because I don't trust you anymore. The words fell like stones between them. Danielle staggered back as if physically struck. What do you mean? I mean you lied. For months you made me doubt my mother. You made me believe that she was the problem. And now I see that the problem was you, and I don't know if I can forgive that. Danielle turned pale. Robert, I'm your wife. We have a daughter. I know. Believe me, I know. And that's why what you did is so serious. Because you didn't just hurt me. You hurt our family. You destroyed Sophia's relationship with her paternal grandmother. All for what? To have this house. To make your mother feel important. My mother needed help. And mine, too. Robert ran his hands through his hair in frustration. He was on the verge of collapse. Don't you understand? My mother lost her husband 8 years ago. She lives alone. She opened her house to us because she loved us, because she wanted to have us close. And I treated her like a nuisance. He turned to me. His eyes red-rimmed, his face swollen from crying. Mom, he said, voice breaking, there are no words to tell you how sorry I am. I have been the worst son in the world. I failed you. I hurt you in the most horrible way. And the worst thing is that there's nothing I can do to fix it. Robert, no. Let me finish. I need to say this. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. When Dad died, I promised you I would never leave you, that I would always be there for you. And I broke that promise in the worst possible way. I didn't just leave you. I kicked you out of your own house. As if you were the stranger. As if you were the problem. Tears flowed freely down his face. And all this time I spent justifying Danielle, defending Mrs. Ellen, moving away from you. Dad must be turning over in his grave because he loved you. He adored you. And he taught me to do the same. And I forgot. I forgot everything he taught me. My heart shattered watching my son in such pain. His remorse was genuine, his suffering palpable, and it hurt me more than any insult, more than any shout. Robert, I managed to say, my voice trembling, your father would be proud that you finally opened your eyes, that you recognized your mistake. That is what he taught you, to be a good man, to admit when you're wrong. But it's too late, isn't it? Robert laughed bitterly without joy. I've hurt you too much. I've damaged our relationship beyond repair. It's not too late, I said firmly. It's never too late for a mother to forgive her son. Do you forgive me? His voice was childlike, vulnerable, hopeful. I forgive you, I said without hesitation. I will always forgive you because you are my son, and a mother's love has no limits. Danielle made a sound of frustration. This is ridiculous, Robert. Seriously, are you going to believe everything she says? Are you going to forget everything your mother did, how she kicked us out, how she humiliated us? She had the right, Robert replied without looking at her. She had every right because it was her house, her space, and we abused her kindness. It wasn't us. It was your mother who exaggerated everything. Stop, Robert's shout made everyone jump. Even Sophia woke up in Mrs. Ellen's arms and started crying. Robert walked over to Mrs. Ellen and took his daughter gently. He rocked her until the child calmed down, his actions those of a devoted father despite the chaos around him. Listen to me carefully, he said in a controlled voice that nonetheless carried absolute authority. This farce ends today. Danielle, you and your mother are leaving this house now. You are going to find a place to stay, a hotel, an apartment, whatever, but you are not going to be here. And you— Danielle's voice trembled with uncertainty. Robert looked down at Sophia, then back at me. I saw an internal struggle in his eyes, a war between his role as a husband and his role as a son. I'm going with you, he finally said, because you are my wife and Sophia is my daughter, and I need time to think, to understand all this, to decide what to do. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Despite everything, despite having seen the truth, my son was still choosing to leave. But then he added something that gave me hope. But we are not going to live off your mother, Danielle. We are going to find our own place with our own money. And you are going to seek help therapy because what you did is not normal. It's not healthy. And if we want to have any chance of this marriage working, you need to work on yourself." Danielle opened her mouth to protest, but Robert raised his hand to silence her. "It's not negotiable. Either you seek help or this ends, and you will lose your family, Miss Sophia. Everything." Danielle closed her mouth. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. They were no longer tears of manipulation, but of genuine fear of losing everything she had. "And one more thing," Robert continued, his resolve strengthening with each word. "This deed of gift, we are going to cancel it. I don't know how, but we are going to cancel it because it was obtained through deception, and this house belongs completely to my mother again, as it always should have been." Mr. David nodded confidently. "We can prove the deception with witnesses with evidence. It won't be easy, but it can be done." Robert walked over to me with Sophia in his arms. My granddaughter was sleeping again, blissfully unaware of all the drama unfolding around her. "Mom," he said softly, "I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I hurt you in unforgivable ways, but I ask you one thing. Just one." "What is it?" "Don't take Sophia away from your life. She loves you. She needs you. And even though I don't deserve your forgiveness, she is not at fault for any of this." I looked at my granddaughter, this beautiful child who resembled her grandfather so much, this innocent creature who had been used as a pawn in a war she didn't ask for. "I would never take her away," I said gently, touching her little head. "She's my granddaughter. I love her. I will always love her." "Thank you," Robert whispered. "Thank you, Mom." He kissed my forehead, a long, tender gesture full of love and regret, and then turned away. "Let's go," he said to Danielle. "Pack what's necessary. We're leaving in 1 hour." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of activity. Danielle and Mrs. Ellen went upstairs to pack, exchanging bitter glances and whispered accusations. Robert remained in the living room with me, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. Mr. David put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Are you all right?" I nodded, although I wasn't sure if it was true. I had won in a way. I had recovered my house. I had exposed the truth. I had seen my son wake up from the manipulation. But I had also lost because my son was leaving. My granddaughter was leaving. And I didn't know when I would see them again. When they finally came down with their suitcases, I stood in the doorway watching them load the car, watching my family fall apart right before my eyes. Robert was the last to leave. He paused before me, his eyes conveying a world of regret. "I'll call you," he promised. "Every day. And we're going to fix this somehow. I promise you." "It's okay," I said, though my heart was breaking. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, son." He walked away. The car started driving off down the street, and I remained rooted to the threshold of my empty house, feeling the full weight of the past few days crashing down on me. Mr. David stayed with me, saying nothing, simply being present. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words, and his silent support meant everything in that moment. I walked into my house, my empty house, my silent house, the house I had fought so hard to reclaim. I sat in the living room armchair, the same chair where I had sat with Michael countless times, the same chair where I had cradled Robert when he was a baby. And I cried. I cried for everything I had lost, for everything I had gained, for everything that would never be the same again. But amid my tears, I felt something else stirring within me, peace. Because I had recovered my dignity, I had set boundaries, I had defended my space. I had shown that I had value beyond being a mother, and that in some strange way was enough, at least for now. The quiet in my house felt different now, a heavy silence filled with memories instead of peace. Each room had become a canvas for ghosts, Robert doing homework at the kitchen table, Michael reading in his favorite chair, imaginary echoes of Sophia's laughter in the yard. This was the silence of aftermath of a battlefield after the war. The days following their departure blurred together. I moved through them, mechanically cleaning rooms that were already clean, organizing cupboards that were perfectly ordered, anything to keep my hands busy, while my mind replayed every moment that had led to this empty house. Mr. David visited daily, always bringing food. "You have to eat, Patricia," he would insist. I would nod and force down a few bites, though every mouthful felt like swallowing sand. My friends from town, Martha Rose Carroll, took turns coming by, filling the house with chatter that couldn't quite drown out the silence that returned when they left. Robert called precisely at 6 every evening. Our conversations were stilted exercises in careful politeness. "How are you, Mom?" "Fine, and you fine. Sophia sends you a kiss." "Give her one from me." "I will. I love you, Mom." "I love you too, son." Each call ended with me staring at the phone, wondering if we would ever recover what we had lost. The words were right, but the music behind them was gone. On the 4th night after they left, I was sitting on my bed examining old photos when my phone rang. It was 11 o'clock, far past Robert's usual calling time. My heart stumbled as I answered. "Hello, Mom?" His voice sounded wrong, choked, and desperate. "Can you come over? I need you." I didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, I stood outside a small apartment in a building I'd passed 1,000 times but never entered. Robert opened the door immediately, his eyes, red-rimmed hair disheveled, looking utterly lost. The apartment was sparse and impersonal, a temporary space, not a home. 2 small bedrooms, a combined living and dining area kitchen, barely large enough for one person. Nothing like the house we'd built with our hands. "Danielle left," he said without preamble, collapsing onto a worn sofa. "She took Sophia to her mother's." I sat beside him, careful to maintain a small distance. "What happened?" "We argued. I asked her to be completely honest about everything. No more manipulation, no more games. I thought we were making progress, but then she just..." He made a gesture like something exploding. "She said I was still choosing you over her, that I wasn't trying hard enough, that if I was going to keep defending you, she was done." He buried his face in his hands. "And I let her go, Mom. I didn't fight to make her stay because suddenly everything became clear. I've been married to her for 6 years and I don't know who she is. Everything I thought I knew was a lie." I wanted to reach out to comfort him as I had when he was small but hesitated. Our new boundaries were still fragile, still forming. He looked up, his eyes reflecting a pain I recognized too well. "I chose her over you. I doubted my own mother, the woman who gave me everything, because of someone who was using me." "It wasn't entirely your fault," I said gently. "Manipulation works because it's subtle, because it happens little by little." "But I should have seen it," he insisted. "All those little comments she would make about you. All those times she'd have some emergency whenever I wanted to spend time with you. All those moments she'd contradict whatever you said. It was so obvious once I saw the pattern. We see what we want to see, especially with people we love." He wiped his eyes roughly. "Do you know what hurts the most? I keep thinking about Dad. About what he would say if he could see what I've done, how I treated you, how I let someone else treat you." "Your father would be proud of you right now," I said, meaning it. Not for what happened before, but for having the courage to face the truth. For not continuing the pattern once you recognized it. He shook his head. "How can you be so kind to me after everything? How can you sit here and comfort me when I'm the one who hurt you?" "Because I'm your mother," I said simply. "And because I understand something now that I didn't before." "What's that?" "That hurt people hurt others. That fear makes people do terrible things. Danielle didn't hate me. She was afraid of losing you." Robert looked at me with confusion. "That makes no sense. I married her. I chose her. How could she think she would lose me to my own mother?" "Fear isn't rational. I think when she saw our closeness, she felt threatened. She saw a bond she couldn't break, so instead of accepting it, she tried to destroy it." "That's no excuse." "No, it's not. But understanding why someone did something doesn't mean you excuse it. It just helps you make sense of it." We sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Robert asked the question I could see weighing on him. "Do you think I can save my marriage? Should I even try?" I considered my answer carefully. "That depends on whether you want to. Do you?" He stared at his hands. "Part of me does for Sophia. I don't want her growing up shuttled between 2 homes. I don't want to be the weekend dad." His voice cracked. "But another part of me wonders if I can ever trust Danielle again. How do I live with someone when I'm always wondering what's real and what's manipulation? And what does Danielle want? She says she wants to save our marriage, but only if I stop prioritizing you." Those were her exact words. The phrase stung, but I kept my expression neutral. "And your response?" "I told her you're my mother and you'll always be important to me. That if she can't accept that, then maybe we don't have a future." I reached out, then taking his hand. That's not a choice you should ever have to make. Love isn't a competition. It's not a finite resource where giving to one person means taking from another. That's what I tried to tell her. He squeezed my hand. Mom, do you think people can change? Really change? Yes, I said, but they have to want to. And it takes work, usually professional help. Change doesn't happen because you want it or wish for it. It happens through consistent effort. Robert nodded slowly. I told her we need therapy. Real therapy, not just a few sessions to smooth things over. And she needs to work on herself too, not just our relationship. That's wise. Dad would have told me to fight for my family, wouldn't he? Yes, I said, but he would have also told you that respect is non-negotiable. He would never have tolerated anyone treating me the way Danielle treated me, or the way you treated me. I know. His voice was small. I miss him so much. I wish he was here to tell me what to do. Me too, every day. We talked until the early hours of the morning, revisiting old memories, acknowledging painful truths, and tentatively building a bridge back to each other. When I finally left, the weight on my chest felt lighter than it had in days. That night, as I climbed into bed, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I spoke aloud to Michael's photograph. Our son is finding his way back, I whispered. He has your heart underneath it all. My phone vibrated with a message from Robert. Talk to Danielle. We're going to try therapy, real therapy. No promises, but we'll try. Thank you for tonight. I love you. I smiled in the darkness. Not because everything was fixed, far from it, but because for the first time I could see a path forward, however winding. The weeks that followed brought small, gradual changes. Robert and Danielle began intensive therapy, both as a couple and individually. Robert started bringing Sophia to visit me on Saturdays, just the two of them at first. Those visits became my anchor's islands of joy in a sea of adjustment. Mr. David worked diligently to have the fraudulent deed of gift canceled. It's complicated, he explained, but we have evidence of deception, and that's powerful. It just takes time. I began volunteering at the local library's children's reading hour, something I'd always wanted to do but never found time for when I was teaching. It felt good to be among children again, to see their faces light up with stories. It reminded me of who I was beyond being a mother or mother-in-law, a person with skills and passions of my own. One afternoon, about a month after everything had happened, I returned home from the library to find a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Miller, this is Dr. Rodriguez. I'm the therapist working with your son and daughter-in-law. Danielle has asked if you would be willing to join them for a session. Please call my office if you're open to this. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, heart racing. Was I ready to face Danielle? To hear whatever she had to say? Part of me wanted to delete the message and pretend I'd never received it. But another part, a stronger part, knew this was necessary. I returned the call. The session was scheduled for Friday at 4 o'clock. That Friday I chose my outfit carefully, a simple blue dress that Michael had always loved, not to impress anyone, but to armor myself with good memories. Dr. Rodriguez's office was exactly what I expected: neutral colors, comfortable furniture plants in the corners, diplomas on the walls. Danielle and Robert were already seated when I arrived. Danielle looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. She wouldn't meet my gaze as Dr. Rodriguez made introductions and explained the purpose of the session. Danielle has been doing important work in her individual therapy, Dr. Rodriguez explained, and she's asked for this meeting as part of that work. Danielle took a shaky breath. Patricia, Her voice faltered. She started again. I want to apologize to you. For everything. The words hung in the air between us. I know what I did was terrible. I manipulated Robert. I deliberately drove a wedge between you. I planned to push you out of your own home. She looked down at her hands. And I did it all because I was afraid. Afraid of what? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Afraid of not being enough. She looked up, tears in her eyes. Afraid that Robert would always love you more than me, that I would always be second best. She explained how her parents had divorced when she was 12, how her father left her mother for another woman, and how for years afterward she watched her mother spiral into self-doubt and recrimination. My mother kept saying she wasn't enough, that if she'd been a better wife he wouldn't have left, and I absorbed that fear. I grew up terrified of being replaced, of not being sufficient. Her hands twisted in her lap. When I saw how close you and Robert were, I didn't see something beautiful. I saw a threat. I thought if he needed you so much, it meant I was failing him. And instead of talking about my insecurity, instead of working through it, I decided to eliminate the competition. I'm not your competition, I said quietly. I know that now. But then, she shook her head. I convinced myself you were trying to control us, that you were interfering. And I taught Robert to see you that way too. I poisoned something precious, and I'm so deeply sorry. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, for the calculated contrition I'd seen in her tears before. But all I saw was genuine remorse and exhaustion. What about your mother? I asked. Does she share your perspective on what happened? Danielle's face tightened. No, my mother still believes we did nothing wrong. She thinks we were defending our family. A bitter laugh escaped her. Dr. Rodriguez has helped me see that my mom taught me to see mothers-in-law as enemies because that's how she saw hers. It's a pattern I'm breaking. That takes courage, I acknowledged. Standing up to your own mother isn't easy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, Danielle admitted. But I have to. For Robert, for Sophia, for myself, even for you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. But I needed you to hear that I understand what I did, and I'm truly sorry. I took a moment to sort through my feelings. There was still anger there, still hurt. But there was also recognition of her pain, of her effort, of the possibility of change. Forgiveness isn't something that happens all at once, I said finally. It's a process, and I'm still in the middle of it. But I appreciate your honesty, and I'm willing to work toward healing for Robert, for Sophia, for all of us. Relief washed across Danielle's face. That's more than I had any right to hope for. We spent the remainder of the session discussing boundaries, what respectful interaction between us would look like, how to navigate holidays and family time, how to ensure Sophia maintained strong relationships with both her grandmothers without being caught in the middle. As we were leaving, Danielle approached me in the parking lot. Patricia, she said hesitantly, I know this is probably asking too much, but do you think someday we might be able to start over, maybe have coffee, just the two of us, and try to know each other as people, not just as Robert's mother and wife? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw not the woman who had tried to destroy me, but a wounded person trying to heal. Someday, I said, when we're both ready. Her smile was small but genuine. Thank you. That evening when Robert called, our conversation flowed more naturally than it had in weeks. How did it go? He asked. Better than I expected, I admitted. I think she's genuinely trying. She is. The relief in his voice was palpable. She's working so hard, Mom. We both are. I don't know if we'll make it, but we're really trying. That's all anyone can do. There's something else, he added. Mr. David called. The deed has been nullified. The house is fully yours again, legally and completely. I closed my eyes, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Thank you. No thank you. For fighting. For not giving up. For showing me that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. After we hung up, I walked through my house unquestionably mine again, and felt something I hadn't expected, not triumph, but peace. Because justice hadn't come from courtrooms or legal documents. It had come from truth being spoken, from mistakes being acknowledged, from love, proving stronger than pride. The path forward wouldn't be easy. The wounds were deep, the scars permanent. But we were healing slowly, painfully, genuinely healing. 3 months later, Robert asked if Danielle could join him and Sophia for their Saturday visit. I agreed, and though the afternoon was awkward at times, it was also a beginning. Danielle brought a homemade cake, not as a bribe, but as a gesture. I accepted it in the spirit it was offered. 2 months after that, I invited them for Sunday dinner. Danielle helped in the kitchen without being asked. We didn't become instant friends, but we found a way to exist in the same space with respect, if not yet with ease. 6 months to the day after I'd found Mrs. Ellen in my bed, I sat in my garden watching the sunset. The air was cool, tinged with autumn. The flowers Michael and I had planted were fading, but beautifully so, in shades of amber and russet. Sophia was playing on the lawn, chasing butterflies and singing to herself. Robert sat beside me on the bench, comfortable now in the silence between us. What are you thinking about? He asked eventually. Everything, I answered honestly. How we got here. What we went through to find this peace. He nodded. It was hard. Yes, I agreed. But necessary. Inside, Danielle was preparing lemonade. She didn't come to every visit, but today she had. Our relationship remained a work in progress, some days easier than others, but always moving forward. When she brought out the pitcher and glasses, her smile for me was genuine. "Thank you, Patricia." "For what?" I asked, surprised. "For giving us a second chance. For showing Sophia what forgiveness looks like." As she poured the lemonade, I realized something profound. This was what I had wanted all along. Not a perfect family from a greeting card, but a real family, one with wounds and scars and imperfections, but also with growth, with effort, with love that had been tested and had survived. Later, after they had gone home, I sat in my living room looking at the walls of this house, walls that had witnessed my pain, my rage, my transformation. Had it been worth it? All the suffering, all the tears, all the confrontation? Unquestionably, yes, because I had learned something essential, that a mother's love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. It doesn't mean erasing yourself to keep peace. It doesn't mean disappearing so others can take your space. True love includes boundaries. It includes respect. It includes the ability to say, "This is not acceptable, and I will not allow it." For years, I had believed that being a good mother meant always yielding, always accommodating, always putting my son's needs above my own. But when Robert yelled at me when he kicked me out of my own house, something awakened inside me, a voice that had been silent too long. A voice that said, "You matter too. Your space matters. Your dignity matters." Though it cost me tears and sleepless nights, defending that voice was the best thing I could have done, not just for myself, but for Robert too. I had taught him something crucial, that mothers are complete human beings with feelings and boundaries and needs. I had shown him that love is not blind compliance. It is not unconditional in the sense of accepting any treatment without protest. It is unconditional in the deeper sense, I love you enough to tell you when you're wrong. I love you enough not to let you mistreat me. I love you enough to expect you to be better. I looked at Michael's photo on the mantel. 8 years since he'd left us, and still I missed him every day. But I knew he would be proud that I had finally learned to value myself, to claim my space unapologetically. My experience had changed me, but it had also given me wisdom I wanted to share with other women, with mothers who find themselves displaced by daughters-in-law, with mothers-in-law who are cast as villains, with women who build homes with their own hands only to be pushed out of them. To them, I would say, you are not alone, and you are not wrong to defend your space. Being a mother doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean enduring humiliation. It doesn't mean vanishing so your son can have a simpler life with his partner. You can love your son fiercely while still requiring respect. You can want his happiness while maintaining your own boundaries. You can forgive without forgetting. You can heal while honoring your scars. And if someone asks you to choose between your dignity and their approval, even someone you love, desperately remember that true love never demands such a choice. What they're offering isn't love, it's control, and you deserve better. I had discovered that silence can indeed be powerful, but so can speaking up. There are times when we need to stand firm to say no more, and doing so doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you human. It makes you strong. It makes you worthy of the respect you're demanding. As the evening deepened into night, I felt a profound gratitude. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't and never would be, but because we had found our way back to what mattered, truth, respect, and love, strong enough to survive being tested. That in the end was worth everything we had endured to reach it.